Are you a family member that has been trying to save your addict for months, if not years, and you're exhausted? You're losing sleep. You're just mentally not okay. You just want them to be better. You want to fix them. Well, that is impossible. That's why we created Family Reconnect. Myself, Ben, and Tambini, we're going to go on this journey with you. Okay, you need people on your side that can help you get your life back. We've navigated hundreds of situations just like yours. Now, Family Reconnect, it's not therapy. It's not Al-Anon. In fact, it's quite the opposite. We're going to meet you exactly where you're at, no matter where you're at in this journey. We're going to allow crosstalk. You can ask us as many questions as you want. You're going to be able to engage in the community and talk to your community members and get their feedback. A lot of this stuff isn't done in Al-Anon. You're not allowed to crosstalk. So this is going to be a process for you. We have a 12-week curriculum that we're going to give you that you can go through with us and just have the overall support. Again, we're going to navigate this with you, and there's a lot of twists. There's a lot of turns, and we're there for you every step of the way. The community is going to be great. We've already started this, and it is going phenomenal. A lot of great feedback, and honestly, myself, Ben, and Tambini, we love this. We love communicating to the families and just talking with them and giving them words of encouragement and the support that you probably haven't had for a long time. So if this is something that you're interested in, go to realrecoverytalk.com/FRC to get all the details. And if you want a more personalized experience, there's a VIP option as well. And that's all there at realrecoverytalk.com/FRC. And we're excited to see you inside. Hey everybody, here we are, week 8 of the Big Book Study. Thank you for being here. We're covering the second half of More About Alcoholism, and this is phenomenal. And I'm going to pose to you one question. What stands between you and picking up the next drink? This is a phenomenal chapter. This is the second half, so I encourage you, take notes, enjoy, and I'll see you next week.
Hey everybody, my name's Eric, recovered alcoholic, and let's open this meeting or this big book study with a moment of silence followed by the serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And I often like to break that down the way that Al-Anon does it. And God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the one thing that I can, and the wisdom to know that that one thing is me. That's it. That's all I can change. I've got 3 feet around me. The rest is none of my business. So we're in More About Alcoholism. Last week we did the first half of it, and we read Jim's story, the alcoholic car salesman in the 1930s who lost his business, his car's business, to alcoholism, and wound up working for it. And we were talking about the lie that precedes the first drink. So when we talk about God restore us to sanity, we're referring to this insanity that precedes the first drink. When an alcoholic like myself is stark raving sober and being sober, all the consequences I have, I choose to pick up that drink again. That is insane. Having all the consequences I've had, it's that insanity that precedes that first drink, which carries me into my next debauch. That's the insanity we're talking about. And we always pick up what this chapter More About Alcoholism has been explaining to us is that we always pick up on the lie. We drink on the lie, the great obsession. And an obsession is a thought so powerful it makes you believe a lie. So we went through Jim's rational thinking here when he went out into the country to find a prospect for a car, and along the way he stopped at a roadside inn and he decided to have some lunch, ordered a sandwich and milk, decided to put whiskey in his milk, and we pointed out along the way how he had this succession of rational, normal thoughts, and then boom, the insane thought of, let me put some whiskey in the milk, it won't hurt me. So we went through that story. And right at the end of it, it explains to us, which we're going to read the final paragraph. You may think this is Whatever the precise definition of the word may be, we call this plain insanity. How can a lack of proportion of the ability to think straight be called anything less? And I have written there the state of mind which precedes normal perception. That's the definition of insanity when it comes to alcoholism. And it goes on, it says, you may think this an extreme case. To us, it is not far-fetched. This kind of thinking has been characteristic of every single one of us. We have sometimes reflected more than Jim did upon the consequences, but there was always the curious mental phenomena. Phenomenon means unexplainable. Curious mental phenomenon that parallel our sound reasoning. And I explained that last week, how it parallels. We've got our regular rational sound reasoning riding with us right here, and paralleling it on the same trip is our alcoholic thinking when it comes to alcoholism. And it parallels our sound sound reasoning. There inevitably ran some insanely trivial excuse for taking the first drink. So that's telling us that it's the pebble that trips us, not the boulder. Usually I pick up that drink on something meaningless. Our sound reasoning failed to hold us in check. The insane idea won out. Next day, we would ask ourselves in all earnestness and sincerity how it could have happened. That's where we left off at the end of last week. So tonight, we're going to finish up with the two final stories that he uses, illustrations that Bill W. uses here to point out that obsession, that lie that we drink on. So it goes on. In some circumstances, we have gone out deliberately to get drunk, feeling ourselves justified by nervousness, anger, worry, depression, jealousy, or the like. But even this type of beginning, we are obliged to admit that our justification for a spree, uses the word spree because he's referring to the allergy. If we didn't have the allergy to alcoholism, that would say for a drink, we'd have a drink. But it doesn't. It says for a spree, or that our justification for a spree was insanely insufficient in light of what always happened. We now see that when we began to drink deliberately instead of casually, there was a little serious or effective thought during the period of premeditation of what the terrific consequences might be. And my mind never thinks of what the consequences might be. My mind only tells me, I know how this alcohol is going to make me feel. And the way it's going to make me feel, that thought of that just blocks out the jails, the car crashes, the divorce courts, all of that stuff. Crowds it right out of my mind, and I don't think about that. Right? So it's telling me here that when we go out to drink, when we justify it for some reason, that's the whole, the I'll show her, I'll hurt me idea. And I'm going to go out, I'm mad at my boss, I'm mad at the wife, or whatever it is, so I'm just going to go get drunk. And it says that the justification for his spree was insanely insufficient in light of what always happened. I got written up at work. My boss is a jerk. I'm going to go get drunk, and now I don't show up at work the next day, and now I lose my job as opposed to just getting written up, right? It's all the consequence of the spree is always worse than the justification for going on it. But yet I still try to justify it, and when I do that, I think absolutely nothing of what the consequence will be. I have an excuse now to go drink, and that excuse could be anything. I got the job or lost the job. I'm happy, I'm sad, it doesn't matter, I'm drinking over it. Our behavior is as absurd and incomprehensible with respect to the first drink as that of an individual with a passion, say, for jaywalking. Now, when I first read this story, I didn't really get it. I completely understand it now. And before we get into it, I want to point out, especially for anybody who's gone to rehab, has people loved ones who've gone to rehab, who are in and out of rehabs. You can think of this like that. Think of this as, we're going to think of this analogy here as our drinking careers. So this guy, it's our behavior is as absurd and incomprehensible with respect to the first drink as that of an individual with a passion, say, for jaywalking. He gets a thrill out of skipping in front of fast-moving vehicles. He enjoys himself for a few years in spite of friendly warnings. Up to this point, you would label him a foolish chap having queer ideas of fun. Luck then deserts him, and he is slightly injured several times in succession. You would expect him, if he were normal, to cut it out. So take this to drinking. This is a guy who's drinking. He starts off his drinking career. He's having fun, right? He's having a good time, but then he gets a couple of little consequences. Maybe he loses a job, or maybe he gets into a really bad fight with his wife, and they don't talk to each other for a little bit. Luck then deserts him, and he's slightly injured several times in succession. So he loses his job, he gets into a fight with the wife, whatever, slightly injured, right? You would expect him, if you were normal, to cut it out. So this is a guy that you would expect he would take a look and say, my drinking just cost me that job, and it's going to cost me my relationship with my wife. We're not getting along. Kids are mad at me, right? He's getting slightly injured here. You'd expect a normal person to say, I might have a drinking problem. I should probably stop. So you would expect him, if you were normal, to cut it out. Presently, he is hit again, this time has a fractured skull. So if you compare this to drinking, he doesn't cut it out. He goes out, he keeps drinking, and now he gets a DUI, right? He's injured. Now he gets some serious trouble. Gets let's say, a felony DUI. Within a week after leaving the hospital, so in the book it says presently he's hit again, and this time has a fractured skull. Within a week after leaving the hospital, a fast-moving trolley car breaks his arm. So this guy gets the DUI, goes out the next weekend, and maybe gets another DUI. He tells you he's decided to stop jaywalking for good. That's it. I'm not drinking ever again. For good. It's over. Right? He's decided to stop jaywalking for good, but in a few weeks, he breaks both legs. So this is the promise I make. I'm never drinking again. I promise I'm not doing it. And in a few weeks, I'm drunk again. Wife leaves me. I'm going to jail because I violated my probation for the DUI. And then on through the years, this conduct continues. The guy gets DUIs. He can't hold a relationship. He gets all these consequences. On through the years, this conduct continues, accompanied by his continual promises to be careful or to keep off the streets altogether. You could change that to on through the years, his conduct continues, accompanied by his continual promises to not drink anymore. Finally, he can no longer work. His wife gets a divorce, and he's held up to ridicule. So this guy's hitting the bottom now. He tries every known means to get the jaywalking idea out of his head. He shuts himself up in an asylum, hoping to mend his ways. But the day he comes out, he races in front of a fire engine, which breaks his back. Such a man would be crazy, wouldn't he? So here's a guy, he's got all these consequences. He can't work anymore. His wife's getting a divorce. She's leaving him, taking the kids because he can't stop drinking. He tries every known means to get alcohol out of his head, to get the drinking problem out of his head. He shuts himself up in a rehab, hoping to mend his ways. But the day he comes out of rehab, he can't get past the bar at the airport, and he goes to jail for trying to board the plane drunk. Perfect analogy. See it all the time. People leave rehab, they don't make it onto the plane, man. This is the alcoholic. This is the alcoholic thinking right here. Such a man would be crazy, wouldn't he? You may think our illustration is too ridiculous, but is it? We who have been through the ringer have to admit if we substituted alcoholism for jaywalking, the illustration would fit us exactly. However intelligent we may have been in other respects, where alcohol has been involved, we have been strangely insane. It's strong language, but isn't it true? Some of you are thinking, yes, what you tell us is true, but it doesn't fully apply. We admit some of these symptoms, but we have not gone to the extremes you fellows did, nor are we likely to, for we understand ourselves so well after what you have told us that such things cannot happen again. We have not lost everything in life through drinking, and we certainly do not intend to. Thanks for the information. And I was just talking on a podcast about this today. So when we reviewed Jim, we looked at the low bottom drunk, right? Jim was the guy who lost the business entirely, lost everything, lost his family, everything to drinking. We're about to look at the high bottom drunk, the guy who hasn't lost everything, who still has the family, still has the wife, still has the job. Right? This is the high bottom drunk, or as some people call it, the functioning alcoholic. We just did a podcast on this. So this is the next guy we're going to look at, Fred, right? It's hard for me to tell a guy, when I sit down with a sponsor, it's very hard for me to tell the guy who's still got the job, still got the car, still has the house, the wife is sticking around, he's still got all this stuff. He's got the boat in the backyard. It's hard for me to tell this guy that his life has become unmanageable. But what I do is I tell him, hey, well, what do the relationships in your life look like? You have kids? Yeah, they're not really talking to me right now. Okay, you have a wife? Yeah, she pretty much hates my guts right now. All right, you have friends at work? No, not really. No one really wants to be around me. That's what happens first with these. It's the relationships that start to suffer first. Okay, so what this is going to tell us right here is that it's not your situation, it's not your circumstance that makes you the alcoholic. It's not how much you've lost that makes you the alcoholic. It's what happens to you when you drink. If you drink and you can't stop it, but you can't not drink. So this may be true of certain, or was that where I was? So this makes it, what I just mentioned, makes it very hard for the high bottom drunk to see the truth about himself. So you're going to see this here with Fred. That may be true of certain non-alcoholic people who, though drinking foolishly and heavily at the present time, are able to stop or moderate because their brains and bodies have not been damaged as ours were. But the actual or potential alcoholic, with hardly an exception, will be absolutely unable to stop drinking on the basis of self-knowledge. And to believe anything else is to believe a lie. That's the truth. The alcoholic will be absolutely unable to stop drinking on the basis of self-knowledge. This is a point we wish to emphasize and re-emphasize to smash home upon our alcoholic readers that has been revealed to us out of bitter experience. So let us take another illustration. Fred is a partner in a well-known accounting firm. His income is good. He has a fine home, is happily married, and the father of promising children of college age. This guy's got everything going for him. He has so attractive a personality that he makes friends with everyone. This is the guy, everyone wants to be around this guy. If ever there was a successful businessman, it is Fred. To all appearances, he is a stable, well-balanced individual, yet he is alcoholic. So this is what you'd call the functioning alcoholic, or the high bottom alcoholic. If ever there was a successful businessman, it is Fred. To all appearances, he is a stable, well-balanced individual, yet he is alcoholic. We first saw Fred about a year ago in a hospital where he had gone to recover from a bad case of jitters. He didn't want to admit he was an alcoholic and that it was a drinking. He had anxiety. He had a bad case of the jitters. It was his first experience of this kind, and he was much ashamed of it. Far from admitting he was an alcoholic, he told himself he came to the hospital to rest his nerves because both him and the people around him will say, no, he's not an alcoholic. He can't be an alcoholic. Look, he goes to work. He's got the job. He's got everything going for him. He's just got a lot on his plate. And so he has to have, so you'd drink too if you had as much as he did going on. This is that guy. And everybody knows this guy. And we all know the family members of this guy because they don't want to believe it either. He can't be an alcoholic. Look what he does at work. He told himself he came to the hospital to rest his nerves. The doctor intimated strongly that he might be worse than he realized. For a few days, he was depressed about his condition. He made up his mind to quit drinking altogether. It never occurred to him that perhaps he could not do so in spite of his character and standing. Fred would not believe himself an alcoholic, much less accept a spiritual remedy for his problem. Why would he believe himself an alcoholic if he didn't understand what alcoholism was? His conception of an alcoholic is the guy standing underneath the bridge with the paper bag. And that's not Fred. We told him what we knew about alcoholism, step one. He was interested and conceded that he had some of the symptoms, but he was a long way from admitting that he could do nothing about them himself. He was positive that this humiliating experience, plus the knowledge he had acquired, would keep him sober the rest of his life. Self-knowledge would fix it, and we know from this book and from bitter experience that to believe that self-knowledge will fix the alcoholic is to believe a lie. We heard no more of Fred for a while. One day we were told that he was back in the hospital. This time he was quite shaky. He soon indicated that he was anxious to see us. The story he told us is most instructive, for here was a chap absolutely convinced he had to stop drinking. So Fred knows, I've got to stop drinking. I have to stop. I can't continue to drink like this, right? He's absolutely convinced he has to stop drinking, who had no excuse for drinking. It's not like his life's fallen apart. This guy's got everything. We just read how great and affluent this guy is. absolutely convinced he had to stop drinking, had no excuse for drinking, who exhibited splendid judgment and determination in all his other concerns. So his reasoning, his sound reasoning, and then what we just said, the parallel, our alcoholism parallels our sound reasoning, right? So this is what they mean by that. He exhibited splendid judgment and determination in all his other concerns, yet he was flat on his back nevertheless. Let him tell you about it. I was much impressed with what you fellows said about alcoholism, and I frankly did not believe it would be possible for me to drink again. I rather appreciated your ideas about the subtle insanity which precedes the first drink, but I was confident it could not happen to me after what I had learned. Self-knowledge, right? I reasoned I was not so far advanced as most of you fellows, so he's comparing, and that I had been usually successful in licking my other personal problems, and I would therefore be successful where you men failed. I felt I had every right to be self-confident that it would be only a matter of exercising my willpower and keeping on guard. And that word right there, right, I had every right. How many times do we use that one, right? How many times do we use that word? I have a right to have some drinks tonight. I work hard. I have a right to do this. And, I've come through my recovery to realize, and I'm not talking about when I'm talking about my constitutional rights, stuff like that. I'm not going down that rabbit hole. I'm talking about when I'm using that in my marriage with my wife, with my kids, but I have a right to do this. I work hard. That right is, maybe I do, but that to me, that word is just saying, I don't care about you and your feelings and what I have a right to do what I want. I've given up a lot of my rights when it comes to that today. But this guy, I felt I had every right to be self-confident that it would only be a matter of exercising my willpower and keeping on guard. In this frame of mind, I went about my business, and for a time all was well. I had no trouble refusing drinks and began to wonder if I had not been making too hard work of a simple matter. Right? So he's doing good. His little time passes by. He's not having a problem. He's enjoying being sober for a little bit. Maybe I'm making too big of a deal about this. Maybe I'm not an alcoholic. Look how easy this is. Right? Maybe I'm making too hard work of a simple matter. One day I went to Washington to present some accounting evidence to a government bureau. I had been out of town before during this particular dry spell, so there's nothing new about that. So it's not the fact that he's out of town and away from the wife and in a hotel by himself. He's done that before in sobriety. Physically, I felt fine, so there's nothing ailing him. My business, neither did I have any pressing problems or worries. He's not stressing out over anything. He's simply going out of town on a business proposition. My business came off well, so he succeeds. It went well. My business came off well. I was pleased and knew my partners would be too. It was the end of a perfect day, not a cloud on the horizon. A far cry from old Jim, who lost his business to drinking, who's working for the guy that took over his business that he used to own. That guy's lost everything. This guy's, what's he say? It's not a cloud on the horizon. I went to my hotel and leisurely dressed for dinner. As I crossed the threshold of the dining room, the thought came to mind that it would be nice to have a couple of cocktails with dinner and then go back to the hospital. It doesn't say that, right? It doesn't say go back to the hospital. Nope, I was wrong. It says the thought came to mind that it would be nice to have a couple of cocktails with dinner. That was all, nothing more. To go back to the hospital would be the truth. But Fred's not going to drink on the truth. Fred's going to drink on the lie. I'm going to have a couple of drinks with dinner. That was all, nothing more. And that is a lie. He falls prey to that lie. The truth would have been, I'm going to have a couple of cocktails with dinner. I'm going to have a couple of more. I'm not going to go home, and I'm going to wind up in the hospital. But see, right here, Fred can't see that truth, even though he's got 1,000 experiences that show him otherwise. I ordered a cocktail in my meal. Then I ordered another cocktail. After dinner, I decided to take a walk. When I returned to the hotel, it struck me a highball would be fine before going to bed. So I stepped into the bar and I had one. And right here, I think that Fred is maybe not remembering this correctly, because if he's an alcoholic like me, he had 2 drinks with dinner, he says, and then he went on a walk. And then he came back from the walk and it struck him that a highball would be fine. No. He was thinking about that highball the whole time that he went on that walk. If he's an alcoholic like me, he skipped his happy ass back from that walk early so that he could get this drink because he was obsessing over it. I ordered a cocktail with my meal. Then I ordered another cocktail after dinner. I decided to take a walk. When I returned to the hotel, it struck me that a highball would be fine before going to bed, so I stepped in the bar and had one. I remember having several more that night and plenty the next morning. I have a shadowy recollection of being in an airplane bound for New York and of finding a friendly taxi cab driver at the landing field instead of my wife. The driver escorted me about for several days. I know little of where I went or what I said and did. Then came the hospital and the unbearable mental and physical suffering, and I'm laughing, I'm giggling when I read that because I look at this and it reminds me of something out of The Hangover. I can laugh about it today, but what I picture here, back then they didn't have airports. They landed on a landing field. And here's Fred, drunker than Cooter Brown, and he comes back and his wife is waiting there at the landing field for him in her car or his car. And he gets off that airplane and he's ducking. He's running between cars, hoping she's not going to see him, trying to hail a taxi cab who takes him around New York City for a few days. No cell phones. This poor woman had no idea where he was. And then she finally, after going to the hospitals and the jails, finally finds him in a hospital a few days later. The unbearable mental and physical suffering. As soon as I regained my ability to think, I went carefully over that evening in Washington. Not only had I been off guard, I had made no fight whatever against the first drink. This time I had not thought of the consequences at all. So if we see what happened here to Fred, he drinks, he doesn't drink on the truth, he drinks on the lie, he makes a decision based on that lie, and starts this problem all over again. So what that tells me is that the disease of alcoholism centers in my mind. If he never picked up that first drink, we wouldn't be having this conversation. He wouldn't be in this book. He knows all there is to know about alcoholism, but he picks up that first drink on that lie. That's insane. So is it the allergy that I suffer from that really ails me, or is it the obsession? I'm always going to have the allergy. I'm safe from an allergy if I don't pick up what I'm allergic to. So if I have a mind that cannot understand that tries every imaginable way to pick up that thing that I am allergic to, I'm insane when it comes to that particular thing. So as soon as I regained my ability to think, I went carefully over that evening in Washington. Not only had I been off guard, I had made no fight whatever against the first drink. This time I had not thought of the consequences at all. I had commenced to drink as carelessly as though the cocktails were ginger ale. I now remembered what my alcoholic friends had told me, how they prophesied that if I had an alcoholic mind, the time and place would come, I would drink again. If I am an alcoholic, if I'm an alcoholic, I will drink again. The time and place will come, I will drink again without a defense. They had said that though I did raise a defense, it would one day give way before some trivial reason for having a drink. Well, just that did happen and more, for what I had learned of alcoholism did not occur to me at all. I knew from that moment I had an alcoholic mind and saw that willpower and self-knowledge would not help in those strange mental blank spots. That's the insanity that I'm asking God to relieve from me. That's in the step 2 when I say God can restore us to sanity. It's the insanity that precedes the first drink. It's that strange mental blank spot. I had never been able to understand people who said that a problem had them hopelessly defeated. I knew then it was a crushing blow. 2 of the members of Alcoholics Anonymous came to see me. They grinned, which I didn't like so much, and then asked me if I thought myself alcoholic and if I were really licked this time. I had to concede both propositions. They piled on me heaps of evidence to the effect that an alcoholic mentality such as I had exhibited in Washington, the alcoholic mentality is the obsession. The alcoholic mentality such as I had exhibited in Washington was a hopeless condition. They cited cases out of their own experience by the dozen. This process snuffed out the last flicker of conviction that I could do the job myself. Then they outlined the spiritual answer, the program of action, which 100 of them had followed successfully. Though I had been only a nominal churchman, their proposals were not intellectually hard to swallow. But the program of action, so he had just been an average churchgoer, so he had an understanding of God and spirituality, so it wasn't too hard for him. It's like the guy coming into AA who believes in God already, but just doesn't apply any of that in his life. That's Fred here. So their proposals were not intellectually hard to swallow. But the program of action, though entirely sensible, was pretty drastic. It meant I would have to throw several lifelong conceptions out of the window, and that was not easy. Remember, it's ideas, emotions, and attitudes that were once the driving forces of these men have been cast aside. It's a personality change sufficient enough to bring about recovery from alcoholism that we're looking for here. And your personality is made up of your attitude, your experiences, your outlook on life. These are all things that make up your personality, right? And so I had to throw several lifelong conceptions out of the window. This was not easy, but the moment I made up my mind to go through with the process, I had the curious feeling that my alcoholic condition was relieved, as in fact it proved to be. Quite as important was the discovery that spiritual principles would solve all my problems. I have since been brought into a way of living infinitely more satisfying and I hope more useful than the life I lived before. My old manner of life was by no means a bad one, but I would not exchange its best moments for the worst I have now. I would not go back to it even if I could. So he's saying, his old life wasn't really a bad one. He wasn't a low bottom drunk. He had a lot going for him, but he was losing it. And he wouldn't go back to it if he could now. Fred's story speaks for itself. We hope it strikes home to thousands like him. He had felt only the first nip of the ringer. Most alcoholics have to be pretty badly mangled before they really commence to solve their problems. And I've found that to be true. There's a saying that you don't have to take the garbage truck all the way to the dump. The problem with that is that most of us find we're already there before we want to get off. It's just the way it is. Like, I'm still having fun. I don't want to get off yet. By the time we want to get off, we're already pretty badly mangled. Many doctors and psychiatrists agree with our conclusions. One of these men, staff member of a world-renowned hospital, recently made this statement to some of us. What you say about the general hopelessness of the average alcoholic's plight is, in my opinion, correct. As to two of you men whose stories I have heard, there is no doubt in my mind that you were 100% hopeless. Apart from divine help. So they're 100% hopeless apart from God's help. Had you offered yourselves as patients at this hospital, I would not have taken you if I had been able to avoid it. People like you are too heartbreaking. Though not a religious person, I have profound respect for the spiritual approach in such cases as yours. For most cases, there is virtually no other solution. Once more, an alcoholic at certain times has no effective mental defense against the first drink, except in a few rare cases. Neither he nor any other human being can provide such a defense. His defense must come from a higher power. We have to find that. We have to find a higher power that will bring about that personality change, bring about that spiritual experience significant enough to bring about a complete psychic change, which will bring about recovery from alcoholism. And what this is telling me here, a sick mind cannot heal a sick mind. If I have a sick mind, I can't heal that myself. I need a power greater than myself. Tom, that's what I got. That's the end of more about alcoholism. Hope I didn't go too fast, but